My husband and I have two daughters, Erica 23 and Sarah 25. Much to my disappointment, they've never gotten along. Even as kids, they were always fighting. I'd always hoped they would grow out of it, but it never happened. I tried very hard to encourage them to grow together, as it's always my wish for them to be best friends and take care of each other when I'm gone. Unfortunately, nothing worked, and they seemed bent on hating each other. Some backstory. When Sarah moved out for college, she stopped talking to Erica entirely. This seemed really harsh to me, and I told her that. During this time, I grew closer with Erica as she was still at home, and Sarah seemed to want nothing to do with us. We were both hurt by Sarah's actions. When Erica went to college, Sarah appeared to make an effort to get along with her, and I was excited. But something happened. Sarah said that Erica was bullying her and blocked her on her phone. Erica told me that Sarah had blocked her, so I texted Sarah demanding to know why. Sarah said that Erica was name-calling her and blowing up her phone. I told Sarah she needed to get over it because family is family, and you can't just block family for no reason. It seemed very immature to me, and I was very annoyed. It's been about 2 years, and Sarah hasn't had a relationship with Erica since. Every time I see Sarah, I try to remind her that Erica loves her and tell her about the realities of the situation, that Sarah's successful, and Erica just gets jealous sometimes. But unfortunately, Sarah always seems upset when I bring up Erica and gets moody. Sarah's now getting married. At Sarah's engagement party, to which Erica was not invited, which disappointed me, I told Sarah that Erica was happy for her, but it was hard for her to have her sister be successful like this. Sarah seemed annoyed and brushed me off. Since the party, I've been trying to get a straight answer from Sarah about whether Erica's invited to the wedding. I brought it up a few times when Sarah talked about the wedding, and she ignored me. Eventually, she snapped at me and said that she hadn't had a relationship with Erica in many years, and she didn't know, quote, why you would expect her to be there. I was horrified. I believe Sarah's childish, vengeful antics have gone too far. You just don't treat family like this. Not inviting them to your wedding? My heart is broken, as I want them to care for each other, and I don't know why they refuse to do so. I want nothing to do with the wedding at this point. I'll attend, but I have no desire to help a daughter who treats family like this. I feel like Sarah's just asking me to pick between her and her sister, and I want nothing to do with it. My husband thinks I might be being a little harsh, but Erica agrees with my decision. Am I the idiot for refusing to pick between my daughters and not supporting my oldest decision not to invite her sister to the wedding? You are the idiot. Blocking family for no reason. She gave you a very detailed list of reasons. Why are you always making excuses for one child and brushing off all the issues of your other one? You often mention that you've encouraged your older daughter to be more respectful. However, you've mentioned exactly 0 times you've corrected your younger daughter's behavior or expected her to be nicer to her sister. Why is that? It's so pathetic that OP is playing dumb about not understanding why Sarah hates Erica. There's willful ignorance and there's denial. This is definitely the latter. She says she doesn't want to get involved in their fights, but she really means that she refused to do her job as a parent and expected shared DNA to fix all relationship problems. Now that she's reaping what she sowed, she's going all surprise Pikachu face. Makes me wonder what other issues the girls must have due to her ill-fit parenting. Wait, at Sarah's engagement party, rather than congratulating her, you told her it was hard for Erica to see her be successful? And you don't understand why you're the idiot? Erica seems to be your golden child for whatever reason. You need to butt out because your favoritism is not helping and will only push Sarah away from you. Yeah, OP's blaming Sarah for being more successful than Erica. That is a very bizarre take on the situation. Lady, it sounds like you're completely blind to your baby's faults, and you blame all the friction on the old one who should know better. But your younger daughter is persistently bratty and entitled, and you enabled this all the way. I wouldn't bet on your older daughter being desperately upset if you decided not to support the wedding. She's had no support from you so far in life, so why change now? I, 45 male, have a daughter, teen, Amy, and my wife, Amy's stepmother, 40, Diane, has recently taken issue with Amy. Diane does not respect Amy's privacy and has recently done a lot to invade it. She constantly barges into Amy's room and demands to check her phone frequently. I've told Diane she can't do this without asking Amy or me first, but she says she's as much Amy's mother as I am her father. 2 days ago, Diane went into Amy's room when she was at school and looked through Amy's diary. Her diary has a lock on it and was hidden, so I'm not sure how Diane got into it. When I returned from work, I found Amy in tears and my wife screaming at her, calling her disgusting names. When she saw me, she ran over to me, telling me that she'd read Amy's diary and found out she was gay and calling her names. I shouted at Diane for invading Amy's space because she knows teenagers need privacy and that her diary is necessary for her recovery. The therapist recommended she write down her feelings to help her anxiety. I got very angry, but Diane told me I should kick Amy out or send her to a conversion therapy course. I told her to get out, and after I threatened to call the police, she left. I'm receiving many calls from the family saying Diane is worried about Amy's future. I told them Diane was disgusting. Diane is very angry with me and told me she wants to take a break. Did I escalate the situation by kicking her out? Am I the idiot? Diane's stuff would be packed in on the front porch by the time the day was done if it was me. Diane is a witch, plain and simple. She's proven that she doesn't respect your position as husband or father. She certainly doesn't respect your daughter and her boundaries. She's shown her true colors by using homophobic slurs regarding your daughter and thinks there's something wrong with Amy? Not the idiot, OP. You absolutely did the right thing. You are an incredible dad and stood by your daughter. Kicking Diane out is step 1, and asking for a divorce is step 2. I don't think divorce should be invoked lightly, but dude, come on. Diane sounds like an awful person, and you have to protect your daughter. I mean, conversion therapy? But how long has she been invading Amy's privacy? It sounds like this isn't the first time she's busted into Amy's diary. I wonder how many under-the-radar type things she's done or said to or directed at your daughter over the years. Continue to protect your child at all costs. Get rid of that woman immediately. I cannot emphasize enough how much that experience will affect your daughter. I used to write about my late mom to cope with her loss, and later found out that my grandma would go through my room while I was gone and go through my journals. I'm still angry at my dad for not doing more about it, and I haven't been able to write about my feelings in the same way since. For the last 6 months, my 25 female girlfriend, Molly, 26, started with a joke that I've already made clear that I don't like. It consists of her saying no quickly to anything I ask. I ask her to get a glass of water for me. She says no, and after 1 minute I'm almost getting up. She says she's joking and gets some water. I ask her to wash dishes. She says no. I say, I love you, but she says no. I ask her to take her clothes. She says no. Everything is joking, and after the 30 seconds to a minute, she does it, but she's addicted to saying no first. I've already made it clear several times that I don't like it, even more so with the I love you. She's the only person I can say that to, so it's special to me. And there are serious things that I need her to answer seriously. And if she says no to everything jokingly, I can't tell when she's saying a real no. It's already happened. I keep saying this is boring and I don't like it. She stops doing it and goes back to doing it after a week. Finally, after a brief discussion, because she played this prank in front of our friends, me asking, "Love, can you get me some medicine?" and she with, "No, but kidding," she stopped doing it for 1 month. Yesterday, we welcomed my parents, in-laws, and our 2 best friends to our house. Everyone knew that I was going to propose to her, and I called them because we had always planned this proposal with our loved ones attending, participating in this special day. I asked her to marry me, and she said a quick no, and I was so grumpy and panicked and upset, everyone looking in shock for 30 seconds for her to laugh and say she was joking, finally saying yes. I was so embarrassed and disappointed. I put the ring box back in and said I'd take it out to cool off. I didn't even let her say anything. She kept texting me, no answering calls, saying it was just a joke, and I knew she always did that. She said that I left a difficult situation in the house because it was obvious that I had given up on proposing and did it in front of my parents and my in-laws. She stressed that I made the situation uncomfortable because of a silly joke. Well, I slept in a hotel and I'm still in it. My parents supported me, but my in-laws called me an idiot for giving up on proposing, disproportionately humiliating their daughter. I just really think there's time for jokes, and that moment wasn't clear. She knew I didn't like it and decided to do it anyway. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your girlfriend just learned a much-needed lesson on why you don't joke and say no when you mean yes. And you're not making the situation uncomfortable because of a silly joke. She is. She knows you don't like it. And honestly, who would? That would annoy the crap out of most people. But she did it anyway. What's next? Is she going to say no during your ceremony, jokingly? This whole thing, saying no immediately, was a thing kids did in the 90s. I remember it because I was a kid in the 90s. You would be like, no, kidding, and then laugh because you were single digits old. How is an adult doing this, and why do they think it's funny? Not the idiot, but why would you sign up for this permanently? Seriously, I would overthink this whole relationship. Girlfriend will not change. Girlfriend does not respect your boundaries and feelings. She's shown you who she is, believe her. Then move on and find someone who does. Out of all the things that are wrong from her side, one that stands out to me the most is that afterward, she still puts the blame on you and doesn't even apologize. If you see that your partner is hurt by something you did, yes, even a joke, any well-adjusted human being would apologize. Also, if other people aren't laughing, I wouldn't call it a joke. And you're correct to think there's a time and a place for jokes. I can imagine how hurtful and embarrassing it was to hear the no to your proposal in front of your family. Such an idiot move. I, teen female, will admit I have and always will have a close relationship with my mom, 40. She's truly a fantastic woman. She has a great job and is honestly beautiful. Yet about a year ago, we found out my dad, 42, is having an affair with a woman who's now 26. She's only 10 years older than me. She and I have less of an age gap than my dad and she does. Even though upset, my mom has never trash-talked my dad. I'm so upset, though. It would have been one thing for him to ask for a divorce. Instead, he cheated with someone much younger than him. He and his affair moved out about 2 hours away. I've seen him about 5 times since this happened a year ago. I act pleasant when I see them, but things are awkward, and my dad's and my relationship is clearly strained. So my dad's affair partner's pregnant. He called me yesterday and asked if I wanted to attend the gender reveal party next weekend. I told him no. He asked why. I said I didn't want to talk about it. He kept pushing me, saying how the baby would be my little sibling. Finally, I got annoyed and went off. I told him how it would have been one thing for him to get a divorce from my mom, but he didn't have the guts for that. So instead, you have an affair. So no, I'm not going to accept your little affair baby as a sibling. He called me an immature brat. He later texted my mom complaining about how immature I am and how I need to grow up and accept that, his mistress name, and the baby will be a part of my family. Am I the idiot? Oh wow, he has a lot of nerve to claim that you're immature, seeing as he had an affair with someone closer to your age than his. What exactly did he think was going to happen? Not the idiot. He didn't just cheat on your mother. He cheated on you too. He doesn't get to call you an immature brat when he chooses intimacy over you. He's only visited you 5 times and he lives only 2 hours away? What is he, British? My sister lives 2 hours away and we hang out at least once a month for a full fun weekend. Even if you wanted to accept your new half-sibling, you'd undoubtedly see them less since your dad barely makes an effort to see you anyways, and you're only about 2 years shy of becoming an adult. You don't have time to have a relationship with them, especially not how your dad made it. OP, if your father's anything like mine, which, based on the cheating and calling you a brat, sounds like he is, you will be asked to babysit for free whenever you're around. This child would be born soon before you legally become an adult. You're not going to have any relationship with your father's new family that you don't choose, and it sounds like you're not interested in having them in your life. That's perfectly fine. Can I make a suggestion? I know you're upset, but I highly recommend learning to laugh at him. LOL, he thinks you want a relationship with him when he's barely tried? LOL, he thinks you want the woman he cheated with in your life? LOL, he thinks you give a darn about his affair, baby? What a joke. Your dad's a joke. Treat him like one. Get therapy for yourself to work through the pain, but laugh in that man's face because he is hilarious for thinking he's still got any influence over you after this. My 29 female, partner J, 31 male, wants me to include his best friend H, 36 female, as a bridesmaid in our wedding. H and I used to get along a couple of years ago, but she told J that she didn't like me a while back. I've never been rude to H, and I'm always polite and civil when she's over, especially for J's sake because I know that H is one of J's closest friends. I still talk to her and say hi and bye, but I don't class her as a friend, especially when she's polite to me but'll talk about me, saying how she doesn't like me behind my back. Jay and I recently got engaged, and we're currently fighting because he wants H to be a bridesmaid at our wedding, but I don't want her to be. I don't want someone to input opinion and be part of my hen's night, especially if she doesn't like me, because I want our wedding and the time leading up to it to be drama-free, and I know it'll just cause drama having someone who doesn't like me as part of my bride's party. Jay keeps insisting on getting H's opinions and not my friends, who I want as a part of my wedding party, and he keeps getting angry and treating me like I'm the idiot for this. I've told Jay that if he wants her opinion to make her part of his wedding party, he won't. I then said we could possibly wait until closer to the wedding date to see if H and I become friends again, but I honestly don't feel as if that'll happen. I am starting to feel a bit like an idiot because it is his wedding, and maybe I should just put up with it for his sake. So, am I the idiot? Not the idiot, but it sounds like Jay values H's feelings more than he does yours. Are you certain there's nothing romantic there? The sudden turnaround of H being friendly to not liking you almost seems like you were maybe fine when things were casual, but she got jealous once you and Jay got serious. If he's going to stress you out about your wedding, but prioritize his bestie, this sets the tone for your entire marriage. Are you sure you want to be the second best to your husband? It doesn't even have to be romantic for there to be that jealous angle. Some people just hate it when they aren't someone's number one priority. This should be something people leave behind as they grow up, because they learned that they can't be possessive over people. But some people are still stuck in it. Sure, it's his wedding too. However, she's his friend, not yours. Honestly, what kind of partner would do this? Try to convince their SO to have a person that doesn't care about them to be their bridesmaid? OP, your partner doesn't sound kind, and it sounds like a big deal. He's keeping that friend that talks badly of you and forces them on you. He's not respecting any of your boundaries. I suggest you reflect on your relationship in its entirety. How does he treat you? Reflect and don't make excuses for him. Loving people don't need to be excused for their behavior all the time. I, 19 female, just recently moved out of my parents' house a week ago with my 3-year-old dog. For background, I found my girl when she was a puppy, right before she got washed down a storm drain on a super rainy day. She's a border collie mix. So anyway, with the money that I was saving for a car, I paid for her vet visits, gave her medications, and got her back to health. Then I trained her, thank goodness for online learning at the time, all the while being told by my parents that if she messed up even once, she was out of the house. Fast forward to the past year, and my parents have now started to pass her off to my little brother because he wants his own dog now, to the point where they tried to change her name. While he wants a dog, my brother's not mature enough for one. A week ago, he got upset because she went to the door and pressed the out button. I taught her how to press a button when she needed to walk, and he started to yell at her for it. I yelled at him and told him to back the heck off. Then my parents yelled at me, saying he was allowed to discipline his dog. I lost it, took her out, and then back into my room when we got home. Without telling them, I started looking at the cheapest places to get into, and now live in my own apartment. It's not ideal, but it's cheap, and a 30-minute bus ride to college and work. I made the move while they were at work, and now they're blowing up my phone, wanting to know where I live so my brother can get his dog, calling me an idiot for separating boy and dog. Am I the idiot? So you moved out without telling your family, and all they care about is to give your brat brother the dog back? Not the idiot. Obviously, you seem very reasonable, mature, and responsible. Good luck with the dog in your new life. Your family is awful. Why would you even ask that? Do you have receipts for all the vet bills you paid? And a copy of the papers at the vet saying how you found the dog? This will be your proof of ownership. Are dogs licensed where you live? If so, and she was not licensed, do it yesterday. Tell your parents it's your dog, and you will not allow her to be mistreated and not to contact you again until they come to their senses. They sound like raving idiots. If they keep harassing you, block them. Make sure your landlord or whoever knows to keep everyone from entering your apartment. You should cover all bases. Yep, this is your dog. You trained her and spent the money on her. Don't respond to your parents or your brother about your dog. It doesn't pertain to them at all. Also, if you don't have her microchipped, definitely do that and put your name and details. If brother wants a dog so badly, there are thousands in shelters that need homes. Though, to be honest, I'm not sure I wish your family on any of them. Also, your brother's a brat, and your parents are enabling said brat. Sorry you have parents like this. How dare they? Go no contact with all of them. He's their golden child, and they want to give him everything. Hun, I'm very proud of you. You're amazing, and I hope you and your dog have a great journey together. And do not tell them where you live. Your parents, I want to shake them. You have a brain, guts, and a heart. I'm so very proud of you. OP, congrats on getting away from your idiot family. Do not tell them where you live. Block them on all social media, etc. Things are going to be so much better now. Stand your ground and keep setting boundaries, and get therapy or counseling if you can. Just reading between the lines here, but they're clearly messed up people, and it takes time to heal from growing up in that sort of environment. My 36 female daughter Leah, 18, is a mom. My daughter got pregnant 5 years ago, and it was very shocking news, but we found out very early on and she got to end it. A few months later, she got pregnant again, and I couldn't handle the situation very well at the time, but having my sister, her aunt, talk to her about what she was planning to do, she decided to keep the baby, which I'll admit I wasn't very happy to hear, and I told her she'd have to be responsible about the consequences. Of course, as a mother, I couldn't have her work and distract her from school. I didn't want her to miss out on her childhood, so I had to work evening-night shifts to care for my granddaughter while Leah was in school. Recently, I realized that Leah's been taking advantage of my situation and making me cancel plans so I can babysit for her. I overheard her making plans 2 weeks ahead on the phone with someone saying, "My mom will do it. She has no life anyways," and laughing afterward. Being a single mom and working multiple jobs was hard enough, but since she gave birth to her daughter, I haven't gone out to parties. I've canceled many weekend gatherings so that my daughter can hang out with her friends. And if I did go, I'd always have my granddaughter with me. And for her to laugh about my situation like that angered me. That same day, I was asked by this guy I'd been seeing to accompany him, and I was hesitant, but I didn't want to miss the chance. He's a really nice guy. I haven't been on a date for almost 6 years, and it wouldn't hurt to give my daughter a taste of motherhood when she least expected it. I told my daughter that I got asked out for the same day, and she was happy at first, but then asked if I was going to take her daughter with me, and I said obviously not, and she'll have to cancel plans for a day. I didn't expect her reaction to be so extreme. She cried, screamed, and told me I was being selfish and that I was letting her miss her date just because I thought some guy was interested in me. The argument didn't end very well. I stood my ground and went to that date, and she had to cancel plans, but she's still really mad about it and has been ignoring me. I love my daughter and wouldn't want her to miss anything, but I wanted her to learn a lesson and be responsible. My sister agreed with me, but my friend told me I should have done it on any other day. Does my approach make me an idiot? Not the idiot. Your daughter is an entitled, supersized idiot. You've created a monster who has zero respect for you. You should quit being the mother to her baby. I cannot refer to it as babysitting because I suspect that you've been more of a mother to this baby than she has. She chose to have this baby and she needs to raise it. If she doesn't, get ready to be a grandma again within 1 to 2 years max. Why should she try to prevent getting pregnant again? when you're the one facing all the real lasting consequences of having the baby. Yeah, that drove me nuts. I hope from now on, OP prioritizes her own life and happiness more. Her daughter has a responsibility to learn how to be a mother to her child, not expect others to put their lives on hold to play babysitter all the time and then say they have no life. OP, your kid needs tough love. You need to stop canceling your plans and let her deal with her own child. What got me was, I, 36 female, have a daughter, Leah, 18, followed by, her pregnancy was very shocking news. So a mother who had her kid at 18 is very shocked. Her daughter got pregnant and had a child at 18? Honestly, I hate them both. She refers to the baby as it. She's flippantly talking about motherhood. You both just needed to be adults for once and screamed and cried about who deserved a date. How about this? Neither of you. You're horrible people and need to realize what's important. Everyone's the idiot here. You created this situation. You told your daughter she'd be responsible for her baby and immediately backtracked so your daughter wouldn't miss out on her childhood. All the while thinking you looked like a hero mom to your daughter, and she's been mocking you the whole time. As a result, your daughter's ungrateful and doesn't appreciate all you've done for her. I'm a man in my early 20s. This Wednesday, a new roommate moved in. She's a woman in her 20s, a single mom to an adorable young daughter. I've never met this woman before she moved in. She was brought in by our landlord. We had a 10-minute convo Wednesday before I went to work. I worked the night shift. Yesterday, she woke me up at 7 a.m. I got home at 3. She told me that she had to go to work, but that her daughter was in bed, and asked if I would keep an eye on her. I was so sleep deprived that she had already left by the time I was about to say no. Am I crazy? Or is it very dangerous to leave a kindergartner girl with a strange man? I'm a good person, but she didn't know that. I don't even think I'd be able to leave a kid with someone I knew for weeks, let alone minutes. Her kid is well taken care of. She's happy. They cuddled after her mom got home from work. She read her a story, played with her, and all. And that's why I'm hesitating. Oh, and she did apologize for dumping her on me. Apparently she wasn't even supposed to go to work, but there was an emergency. So am I the idiot if I called CPS on her? I have no problem with watching her kid. I actually love children. My issue is her mom not knowing me, not with me watching the kid. Everyone's the idiot here. Don't bring CPS into it over one incident. Set your boundary that I'm not comfortable watching your child again and see how it progresses. If you report her straight up, you might end up with a very tense living arrangement. You may be a stranger, but she did leave the kid in the house with an adult, which I suppose is better than her being alone. She's still an idiot, though. I personally wouldn't call CPS, but who leaves their child with a stranger? OP, you're not the idiot for considering it, but the mother is the idiot for dumping her child on someone without talking to them first and leaving her child with a stranger. I know a few parents who leave their kids with people they know without asking first, and I find that a problem, but this lady takes it to another level. It's crazy he's more concerned about the child than she is. She doesn't know anything about him. OP, you've barely seen this woman for 10 minutes. She and her kid are strangers. You don't even have her number, I'm guessing. You don't know the kid. The kid doesn't know you. You know nothing about school, allergies, or medical issues. If this happens again, contact the landlord. Tell him the woman and her kid are not a good fit in the house, and have them call the woman and call the cops. You should have a record of this, in case anything happens, to cover your butt. How long did she leave her with you? Do you have any way to contact her? Nope. Honestly, I couldn't even remember her name. That was how brief our convo was. She left her with me until around 6 p.m. This is insane. She was gone for 12 hours and you didn't know her name? Yeah, no, that's abandonment. She's going to pull this crap with every roommate. Contact your landlord, make the report, and make it clear that you will not babysit again. If she does leave the kid again, call the cops. You'll need official evidence. That's completely unacceptable. What if you had to work? Why didn't you get her contact info immediately from the landlord for her name, number, and work to contact her directly? You need to make it absolutely clear that this cannot happen again. And if it does, you'll drop the child off at the police station on your way to wherever you had planned to go that day. You can tell her you had a pleasant time with the child and may be willing on occasion to sit with her for an hour with prior permission, but you're not childcare. Lay down the expectation now, because it'll get worse now that you got away with it once. I have 4 kids from prior relationships, and my wife has 1. She has full custody of her son, but I have 2 of my kids here full-time and weekends for the other 2. My wife gave birth on Wednesday and came home from the hospital on Thursday, so the kids and I have been doing our best to keep the house as quiet and relaxing for her as possible. On Friday, she asked me not to pick my youngest kids up because she feels the house is already unbearable with 3 kids, and 5 is too much. I told her she knew that wasn't possible. That's not how custody arrangements work. Besides, how would that make my kids feel? She said she just gave birth, so her feelings are important. I said I'm not flaking on my kids, so we need to figure something else out. Friday, when it was time for me to pick up all the kids, my wife was napping. I didn't want to potentially wake her, so I told my oldest, he's 19, to hold the baby until I got back. When I returned with all the kids, my oldest and my wife were screaming at each other. The best I can tell is that she woke up and went looking for me, and my son told her where I went, and she called me a thoughtless idiot. My son called her a hateful witch, and then they started screaming at each other. I got the kids to all go outside for a bit while I talked to my wife. She said I was an unbelievably selfish idiot that couldn't even give her a break for one weekend. She said none of this would have happened if I hadn't insisted on picking up my younger kids. She said she wanted my oldest to leave, but I said that wasn't an option. She locked herself in our room. I get that childbirth is more challenging than I'll ever know, and she's exhausted, but I don't feel like what she asked for is something I can give. Was I an idiot for insisting on getting my kids? Not the idiot. I understand that she just gave birth and is exhausted and overwhelmed, but she doesn't get to pick and choose when you're a father to any of your children, and particularly not so you can prioritize her as an adult. You were correct that this is not how custody agreements work, but more importantly, that's not how parenting works. You are the idiot, as is your partner, for not making plans in advance of giving birth to provide an atmosphere as relaxing and most conducive to recovering during a traumatic and exhausting period. I think you should have had all your other kids at alternative arrangements, if possible, for a week or so while you settled in, got into a routine, and your wife recovered. The time to do that was about 3 to 6 months before giving birth. Let the other kids know why and plan for the time they'll all get to meet their new sibling. Frankly, I understand your partner to a point. I can't think of anything worse than having a house that crowded when I'm trying to recover and settle into the newborn routine. I'm astonished that this didn't occur to either of you prior to literally a day or so before the kids were due home. This will be a problem because you just had a 6th child with a woman who genuinely believes that it's okay to shove your other young children out the door for her personal comfort. OP will be expecting baby number 7 with this woman, number 4, soon enough. It's been 2 days, and they're already on different pages. This is a mess. OP's an idiot for not having this all figured out long before the baby was conceived, or at least during the 9 months leading up to the birth. Dude, stop having kids. My ex likes to tell me what I should and shouldn't do on my custody days, and I generally ignore her because there is a reason we divorced. She has a list of food she doesn't want our daughter to eat, and I ignore her list. I drop our daughter off at school Monday mornings, and her mother picks her up. She called me yesterday to say she was cleaning our daughter's lunchbox and found onion slivers and asked if any of the lunch I packed had onions. I said, yes, it did. She said that the onions were on her list. I said, I didn't care. She said onions make our daughter smell bad when she sweats, and kids will bully her. I said that our daughter showers at my house, and she might also try that at her house. She called me a spiteful idiot and told me no more onions. Our daughter likes onions, so I'm going to ignore her. A part of me does wonder if I was petty, though. It makes me angry when she tells me what to do, so maybe that's clouding my judgment. Am I the idiot? Edit. She's allergic to strawberries, but I don't feed her strawberries because she's allergic to them, not because they're on the list. Not the idiot. X would have known if the onions caused her to smell bad without finding the slivers. This woman's going to create massive food issues with your kid. Keep doing what you're doing, and just be better at hiding it from her. Your daughter deserves so much more than what her mother's giving her. How far does it go? She's too fat, so kids might bully her. So let's stop feeding her. She's got hair on her arms and people might bully her, so let's shave her. This woman's a monster. I was waiting for the allergy thing, and it was about smelling bad. She's a tween that likes onions. That's freaking awesome. Most kids are picky or plain eaters. While it is true that onions and garlic can make you smell, you need to eat quite a bit for it to take effect. Absolutely ridiculous. Ignore the mother. Heck, I might even take her to court to get her less time. She clearly has mental issues and needs a therapist.
We eagerly waited for passengers at the airport's baggage area. My brother-in-law Bob, along with his 2 daughters, 9-year-old Danica and 7-year-old Louise, joined my son David, 12, and my daughter Sheila, 9. The kids proudly held up a big sign that read, "Welcome home, mommies." 2 weeks ago, my wife Mandy and her sister Helen took a vacation to the beaches of Belize, a perfect escape from the chilly Minnesota winters, especially in January. Finally, the passengers from the plane started emerging at the door, and the kids couldn't contain their excitement, bursting into cheers at the sight of their mothers. Both women looked stunning with their beautiful tans and smiles. Mandy warmly greeted David and Sheila, giving them tight hugs and kisses. Then she turned to me, rewarding me with a passionate kiss. I embraced her and didn't want to let go. "I really missed you, honey. Just wait until the evening," she whispered in my ear. "I'll show you how much I missed you." That night, she certainly lived up to her promise. After 15 years of marriage, she knows me well, especially my appreciation for tan lines. After putting the kids to bed, we headed straight to the bedroom. "Honey, get into bed and be ready for me when I come out of the bathroom." In no time, I found myself waiting in bed. A few minutes later, Mandy emerged from the bathroom, wearing a bikini. Mandy's most attractive feature has always been her beautiful face, perfect for smiles. However, she's her own harshest critic, feeling she's too short or too thin. Both pregnancies had the side effect of making my chest larger and fuller. The thong bikini beautifully highlighted her curves, but the best was yet to come. Mandy stood at the foot of the bed, showcasing her golden tan from the beach. Slowly, she pulled down her thong, revealing faint tan lines where the straps were. The private area remained the same milky white as before. Excitement surged as she unbuttoned her bikini top, letting it hang over her chest. Finally, the bikini fell to the floor, revealing her cute little chest. I immediately crawled to the foot of the bed, grabbing her waist, and pulled her towards me, showering her with kisses and caresses. She responded eagerly, reaching her peak in just a few minutes. Several times, I simply enjoyed the musky scent of her body. She expressed how much she had missed me and shared that she found it sweet. She mentioned her gladness at being back home. We spent a good part of the night reconnecting. A few days later, during Mandy's bathtub cleaning, she playfully mentioned having been in the hallway enjoying the beautiful view. She giggled and approached me, teasingly pressing her body against mine. She explained that this was her way of teasing. Normally, I would press my hips down to increase contact, but a few seconds earlier, a feeling of fear overcame me. I didn't know why, but something was definitely wrong with the picture in front of me. However, I couldn't pinpoint what it was. Tired of my lack of response to her teasing, Mandy expressed dissatisfaction, mentioning that, like all men, I only used words and no actions. She made a final thrust of her hips, and then turned to grab the gloves from the sink, stating that she better finish the bath. It was then that I realized a small detail had struck my subconscious. I turned pale, left, and muttered that I was going to the garage, not caring if Mandy heard me. In the garage, I sat on a workbench, lost in my thoughts, having a bad feeling about what I had just discovered. I wondered if Mandy had cheated on me while she was in Belize. I was sure of one thing. If Mandy tried even a little, finding a willing man wouldn't be a problem for her. And what I saw made sense only if she tried something with her sister while on vacation. What will I do if I find out she cheated on me? The answer was clear. I'll leave her without a second thought, even though it will hurt, especially for our 2 children. Why did she do this to me? To us? Am I such a bad husband? These questions circled in my head for the rest of the evening. Despite strongly feeling she cheated, I had no evidence. How can I be sure? The deception, if it happened, occurred 3,000 miles away in another country. I can't confront her. She'll deny it. Can I stand up to her sister? I played with this idea, but the 2 sisters were equally stubborn. Throughout my life, I knew sisters. If one cheated, the other did too. I had to talk to Bob about my suspicions. Later on, I heard Mandy calling me, and I returned home. "What kept you in the garage for over 2 hours?" Mandy inquired. "Just doing a bit of cleaning," I replied casually. Then a thought struck me. I didn't want to share a bed with her. Anyway, I've caught a cold that hit me this morning. I think I'll sleep on the couch for a few days. Mandy didn't seem pleased. "All right, I'll make you some herbal tea before bed. Chamomile should help," she suggested. After Mandy went to bed, I found myself alone with my thoughts, jumping from one idea to another. Why did she do this? What should I do? Should I talk to Bob to find out if Helen cheated? At some point, I realized there was a foolproof way to find out if Mandy was cheating. She had developed a habit of staying in touch with all her friends and acquaintances. Mandy had around 600 or 700 friends on Facebook, and even more in her Yahoo address book. If she contacted someone in Belize, I'm sure they exchanged information via email to stay in touch. However, I wasn't sure if she would use her current email account since we knew each other's passwords. I fell asleep, and a plan began to form the next day. Exhausted and struggling to concentrate at work, I scheduled an appointment with a divorce lawyer on Friday. Then I called Bob, asking him to meet me for lunch. Surprised, he agreed, and I shared my discovery. Initially, he laughed, but I soon convinced him it was serious. He would investigate if Helen cheated on him. Pretending a bad flu, I left the office early and returned home at 3 p.m. I promptly installed keyboard tracking software on our home computer. It took a week before I discovered the truth. Mandy logged into another email account as Beach Dreams 1975, using our children's names and ages as the password. Just days after returning from Belize, she was in daily contact with Brad. The emails were explicit for both Mandy and Helen. Helen was involved with a guy named Steve. I forwarded all the emails and erased any traces of my surveillance. Then, I sent Bob the emails from my account. I learned they had been intimate almost from the first day in Belize, and even planned to meet again in Chicago next month. The girls would pretend to shop, while the 2 friends would pretend to watch the Chicago Blackhawks. A quick check of Mandy and Helen's Facebook pages revealed recent friends, Brad Simmons and Steve Reiner, both from Illinois, and both married. I had them in my hands. I had a challenging task ahead. Bob denied that Helen and Mandy were cheating, keeping my suspicions a secret. He never truly believed his wife would cheat on him, a sentiment I understood. Despite Mandy's loving behavior towards me and the children, it was hard to believe she would end the marriage. She seemed so caring and loving that I sometimes doubted myself. It helped. Needing to resume regular closeness, I called Bob at work. I greeted him as Jack and asked if he could log into his personal email account from work. He confirmed and inquired if I had sent him something. I told him to read all the letters and call me back. After waiting for half an hour, Bob exclaimed over the phone, expressing his shock and anger. I calmed him down, assuring him that I had a plan and needed his help. We couldn't let them know what we knew, and I shared my desire to hurt Mandy. Bob agreed to the plan and revealed his eagerness for revenge. I instructed him to call home, leave a message saying he would be working late, and meet me in a pub in the Old Town that evening. At our first strategy meeting, I suggested to Bob that embarrassment could be a powerful tool against our wives. Bob, initially silent, eventually agreed. I mentioned that Tom, our father-in-law, was particularly fond of his 2 daughters, and Bob nodded in agreement. I revealed that Tom had a strong aversion to cheating wives, explaining that his ex-wife, the mother of Mandy and Helen, had cheated on him throughout their marriage. Bob, with a sly smile, added that Tom hated cheating wives more than anything else. We decided to use this information to embarrass Mandy and Helen in front of their loved ones. I outlined my plan, explaining that we had only 2 weeks to act like caring husbands and advising Bob to follow my lead. I suggested he pretend to catch a cold, work late into the night, and be too sick or tired for bedroom activities, keeping closeness to once a week for appearances. That evening, I returned very late, pretending to have a terrible headache. Despite thinking about the revenge plan for a while, I soon fell asleep, aware of the impending betrayal. When Mandy mentioned a shopping trip to Chicago with Helen, I enthusiastically supported the idea. To show love and support, I even booked a hotel room using our joint credit card, reserved for Mr. and Miss Johnston, double occupancy, assuming Helen and Mandy would share. Bob offered to pay for the room, which was reserved for Mr. and Mr. Roche, also double occupancy. Both Bob and I arranged everything so that each woman thought we were renting one room, unaware that their lovers would be there. The girls planned to take Friday off, fly to Chicago in the morning, and return on a late flight from Chicago on Sunday. The following week, I spoke with Tom Raines, Mandy's father, sharing my plan for a surprise family reunion in Chicago with the kids. Since it was just 2 weeks after our 15th wedding anniversary, Tom thought it was a great idea. I asked Tom to book 3 rooms, thinking it would be a big surprise. Bob and I were outraged by our wives' behavior. On the morning we dropped them off at the airport, they acted like giddy schoolgirls on their way to their first date, laughing at nothing and everything, filled with nervous energy. At the security gate, we kissed them on the cheek, and they didn't notice that neither Bob nor I said, "I love you." Bob drove us back to town, and I quickly called the private detective I hired. I inquired if everything was in place for their stay in Chicago. The next morning, we all met at the airport. During the flight, Tom switched seats with my son David and sat next to me. Sensing something amiss, he asked what the problem was, noting that Bob and I looked like we were heading to a funeral. I apologized for keeping him in the dark and revealed the bad news about our wives cheating on him. I explained that a private investigator was collecting evidence for a divorce, and we would file it as soon as we caught them with their lovers. Tom expressed sorrow, putting his hand on my shoulder in a fatherly way. He mentioned how much it hurt, and wished the few years they lived with him were enough to guide them. Tom began to cry, saying he didn't know he could suffer so much again. Having come to his senses, he stood up and returned to his place. Alan White greeted us at the Chicago airport and handed 2 envelopes, one for Bob and one for me. Inside were incriminating photos and a DVD of the previous night's events. He informed us that the process server would contact us soon, and his operative was monitoring the bedrooms. His assistant would notify us of the most compromising moment to confront the lovers. Simmons and Reiner's wives would receive similar packages by midday. We asked Tom and Alan to look after the children for a while, as we needed to assess the situation. My heart sank, seeing Mandy in various explicit positions, including a troubling photo with 2 mans. It seemed they had unprotected closeness, so Bob and I would need to get tested for STDs in Minneapolis. Alan called his assistant to check if the hotel was clear as the lovers were out for lunch. Tom ordered 3 numbers, and we requested an additional key card for rooms 201 and 203, registered in our names. Both key cards were issued after the clerk checked our IDs. We informed the receptionist that our children had planned a surprise to avoid alerting our wives. We all went up to the 3rd floor where our rooms were located. After an hour of waiting, Alan called, reporting that the lovers had returned from lunch and switched partners. Mandy was with Reiner, and Helen was with Simmons. Alan informed me that he was in the lobby, and the process server had just shown up. I turned off the phone and cheerfully told the children that it was time to go. "Remember what I told you, Sheila. And you too, David. Grandpa and I will enter the room first, and when I give you the signal, you shout, 'Surprise, Mom!' Understood?" "No problem, Dad," said David. "And under no circumstances do you enter the room until I tell you to?" "Yes, that's right. We understand everything, Dad. Go." We walked up the stairs and stopped in front of room 201. I inserted the key and quietly opened the door. Tom and I went inside, the 2 children behind us. However, they didn't wait. As soon as the door opened, they shouted, "Surprise, Mom! We are here!" Caught off guard, Mandy had been with Reiner. Our appearance was indeed a surprise. Reiner hurriedly dressed and left the room. At least he reacted quickly. Mandy jumped out of bed, trying to gather herself. "No, no, this can't be true. No, what are you doing here?" she exclaimed. "Hey, Mommy's undressed," squeaked Sheila, squeezing herself between Tom and me. I snapped my finger, and the process server entered the room. "Mandy Johnston?" he asked the only undressed woman. "This is my mother," Sheila said, trying to be helpful. The process server handed her an envelope. "You've been served," he said, and took a photo of Mandy holding the envelope, attempting to hide her chest. He left. I urged the children to leave their mother while she got dressed. We exited the room, leaving Mandy crying on the floor, fully aware of the contents of the envelope. Bob and his children were in the hallway. I informed Bob that the situation with Helen had not gone well. Simmons had proven to be an aggressive type. When interrupted during his indiscretions, he reacted angrily. Tom got punched in the face. Without hesitation, Bob expressed his disappointment, punching Simmons immediately. Helen, in a commendable act, defended her father by scratching Simmons' face. I entered the room, removed Simmons, and tossed him into the bathroom away from the kids' view, along with his clothes. "Get dressed and get out of here, goat," I ordered. Tom, Bob, and the children left the room without any shame. Helen, covered only with a blanket, followed them. Her father instructed her sternly, "Go back to the room and get dressed." She complied like a little girl, walking back into the bedroom. The process server, who had fled during the argument, reappeared in the doorway. "Ellen DeRoche." "Yes," she responded. He handed her the envelope. "You're served." We all returned upstairs. The initial plan was to spend the night and talk to our wives one last time, but I wasn't in the mood to be in the same room with Mandy. I grabbed our luggage and informed the kids that we were going home. Tom expressed his desire to stay. He had a lot to tell his daughters. Bob and his children returned with us to Minneapolis 4 months later. Despite Mandy's numerous pleas for forgiveness, a judge reviewed our case and granted an uncontested divorce. The house was mine because I inherited it from my parents before I met Mandy. I also received primary custody of the children, but I did not ask. Tom ensured their well-being. Our assets were evenly divided, and Tom gave me a generous Christmas gift the following year to help me financially. He clarified that the money came from Mandy's future inheritance. Bob's divorce unfolded similarly, but their house was shared property. However, shortly after the divorce, Bob and Helen resumed dating, and I'm quite certain they'll end up back together. It's a shame. As for Mandy and me, there's no way I'll ever take her back. I somewhat believed her apologies and think she still loves me. My issue is that her betrayal completely crushed my love for her, leaving it in the dust of her betrayal on the beaches of Belize. I can't love her anymore, even for the sake of the kids. We're very polite to each other, but that's the extent of it. One day, while waiting for the children to join her, Mandy expressed curiosity about how I knew about the situation in Belize. I responded, attributing it to my love for tan lines. She seemed puzzled, stating that she was always in a bikini and we never visited a beach. I prompted her to think about her routine when cleaning the bathroom with various chemicals. She explained that she gathered everything she needed, put on plastic gloves, and rolled up her sleeves. I pointed out that she forgot one thing she always did first, taking off her rings, including her engagement and wedding rings, leaving no tan line on her finger. I've always believed that life can throw unexpected surprises your way. Sometimes they're good, and sometimes they leave a lasting impact. This is the story of one such surprise, a night that started well but ended in a way I never imagined. I'd been dating Jenna for a few months. We met at a friend's party and there was an instant connection. Jenna had this contagious laugh and a way of making everyone feel special. We had our differences, but they added spice to our relationship. Instead of causing problems, one evening we decided to go on a date. We began with dinner at La Bella, a cozy Italian restaurant downtown. The atmosphere was perfect, the food delicious, and the conversation flowed easily. As the night went on, Jenna suggested we go to Murphy's Dive, a local bar where our friends and co-workers often hung out. I thought it was a great idea. What better way to end the evening than with good company and a few drinks? Murphy's was lively when we arrived, with familiar conversations, laughter, and clinking glasses. We mingled, chatted with friends, and everything seemed perfect. A couple of hours later, I excused myself to use the restroom. As I entered, I noticed familiar shoes under a stall. I paused, trying to place them, when I heard a voice that sent chills down my spine. It was unmistakably one of my coworkers saying, "Do that thing." My heart raced as I pieced together the puzzle. Those were Jenna's shoes. A whirlwind of emotions hit me: anger, betrayal, shock. Without a second thought, I headed straight to the bar, asked the bartender to split our check, paid for my drinks, and left Murphy's without waiting for Jenna. I drove around aimlessly, trying to process what had happened. I ended up at a 24-hour diner, ordering a black coffee and staring into it, the bitter taste matching my mood. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I crashed at my buddy Mike's place. He's the kind of friend who doesn't ask questions when you show up. He just handed me a beer, and we played video games until dawn the next day. My phone was blowing up. Jenna had texted a dozen times, and there were a few missed calls. She apologized, said it was a mistake, that she was drunk, but honestly, it all sounded like noise to me. I took a few days off work, unable to face my coworker or the office gossip that was sure to follow. Mike and I hung out, binge-watched shows, and ordered way too much takeout. It was a good distraction. A week later, I finally met up with Jenna. We sat in a park, and she cried a lot. She said it meant nothing, that she regretted it instantly. I just felt numb. I told her I needed space to think. Part of me thinks maybe it was just a one-time mistake, but another part wonders if I can ever trust her again. What would you do?
I messed up big time. I wrote a post in subreddit about wanting an open relationship, and my husband found out, leading to a huge fight with hurtful words. Upset, I left home for a walk. A coworker, the man I wanted an open relationship with, called and invited me to his house. Frustrated, I decided to go along with it. So I asked him to pick me up, and we went back to his house, had drinks, and watched TV. Feeling frisky, I made a move, but it was disappointing. He ignored me, went back to the TV, and after an hour, he started straddling me. I went along with it, but the closeness was terrible. He refused to go down on me, citing a sore tongue from eating Pringles, so we went straight to bed, which was awkward. He forgot to pull out. Afterward, he went back to watching TV, and I went home. Reflecting on the walk back, I realized I just wanted excitement to escape routine. The reality of closeness outside my marriage didn't live up to expectations. My husband, with his experience, is far better. I was harsh in my last post, criticizing his size, but thinking it over, he's around 7 inches, not that small. I let a fantasy take over. When I got home, my husband was in the kitchen, unresponsive. He cooked pasta, didn't share, and went to sleep in the living room after tossing a towel at me. I fell back asleep after finding a rug. I tried talking to him on the couch, but he ignored me. I woke up early due to the cold since the heater in my room was off. This gave me more time to think, and I realized I messed up and need to be a better wife. I attempted to talk to my husband all day, but he remained unresponsive. When I made a move on him, he rejected me and left the room, something he had never done before. Even when tired, he'd at least go down on me. But today he seemed disinterested in everything. I hadn't noticed him eating or drinking anything all day. He just looked tired. When I tried sitting him down to talk, he got up and left the house. Calling him went to voicemail, so I texted him expressing my love and the need to talk for the sake of our marriage. He replied that he no longer wants a conversation or a marriage with me, planning to stay elsewhere until the new year. Upon his return, he expects me to be gone. He claimed ownership of the house, contacted a lawyer, and wants communication through her, not using his old number. I found out he's staying at my sister's house, and I'm worried she might make a move, as she's attractive and single. I texted her, but she said she loves me, but won't support me after what I did, suggesting we shouldn't talk for a while. I feel betrayed. I love my sister, but hate her for what she's doing. I hope my husband doesn't let her have her way. It's been a long day and I don't know what to feel or do. I just want things to be normal again. Sorry for the essay, I needed to vent. I messed up, but I never thought it would get this bad.
My husband caught me cheating, exposed video proofs, and shattered my life in front of family and kids. I thought I'd arrive early at the lawyer's office, but when my lawyer and I got there, Dave and his lawyer were already in the conference room. Seeing him with an attractive woman triggered my usual jealous reaction, making me feel somewhat inferior to him. Deep down, at 48, he was more handsome than at 20, tall and muscular, owning a successful business, and leading the local chamber of commerce. I shuddered at the thought that if today didn't go well, I might never feel his comforting arms again. Dave barely acknowledged me as I followed my lawyer into the room. My face turned pale when the red-haired lawyer reached out to reassure him. I interpreted it as her wanting to quickly finish the meeting to pursue him. I knew from experience that she would enjoy it, as my husband was skilled and knew how to use his charm. Dave smiled at her but remained neutral when he looked at me. Frustrated by Dave's determination not to talk to me, I was forced to attend the meeting. While my lawyer chatted with the red-haired lawyer, I sat down. Dave took a folder from my large purse, opened it, and laid out the finished 2-page script. Seeing Dave smile faintly, I knew he was aware of my thorough preparation. He set up a laptop, plugged in speakers, and put a single sheet of paper next to it. Then, casually, he put his hands on the table and looked at me with a polite but insensitive face. No anger, no hate, no grief. I had prepared for this meeting for 3 days, knowing my script by heart. I used my knowledge of David Brown to appeal to his emotions. We gathered to discuss Mrs. Julianne Brown agreeing to sign a divorce petition if Dave listened to her for at least 1 hour. "If everyone is ready, I suggest the hour begins now," she said, turning the timer knob. It began to tick loudly, emphasizing the silence in the room. I was annoyed that Dave insisted on having lawyers present, instead of a private meeting. I planned to share my feelings for the next 45 minutes before making Dave admit to something justifying my inappropriate behavior. It's awkward with just the two of us, even more humiliating in front of strangers. Well, no point in dwelling on the negatives. I had no choice. Glancing at my unnecessary notes, I crossed my fingers, remembering my friend Sonia's advice. I cleared my throat. I expressed gratitude for Dave's willingness to meet with me today. I acknowledged my error and clarified that it wasn't related to his failure but rather my own self-centeredness. I had spent days reflecting on this, hoping that Dave would appreciate my honesty. I believed he desired to forgive me, and my speech aimed to offer the justification he needed. Contemplating what might happen if the kids were at home, I considered playing the Dave "you can't break up the family" card, confident it would succeed. Observing his reaction to my speech, I examined his face and was taken aback by his response. In the ensuing silence, Dave's expression remained neutral. He didn't even direct his gaze toward me. Methodically, he raised his pen and marked a check next to the first sentence in his notes. My first words almost completely confused me. I said exactly what he expected, shaking my confidence. In my arrogance, I forgot that not only had I come up with my argument based on 30 years of knowing him, but he had spent those 30 years looking back at me. I'm not ashamed to admit I was shocked. I emphasized the importance of sticking to the script, reiterating that the situation with Dave was a result of my own foolish and self-centered decisions. I conveyed the feelings of being lost without children, feeling aged, unattractive, and worthless. I explained that I met Jason while collaborating on a church committee, describing him as sophisticated and a skilled seducer who knew precisely which button to press and when. He began acting like a friend, listening to my problems after church meetings last year when you were frequently away. But one day, after a church meeting, Jason suggested going to a cafe, and unfortunately, I agreed. It all seemed innocent, and he appeared as a good friend, so I didn't realize he was adept at breaking through a woman's defenses. Well, from coffee shops, we progressed to restaurants where he complained about his wife. I know it's a cliché, but by then I trusted him. The restaurants became increasingly upscale, and the gifts he gave me became more enjoyable. Oh, Dave, you can't imagine how nice it is when a guy 15 years younger than you tries to win you over. But you'd be proud because 4 months ago he asked me to sleep with him, and I declined. I should have refused to meet him after that when his intentions were clear, but by then, I had become somewhat reliant on the effect his compliments and attention had on my ego and confidence. I fell silent and sniffled, wiping my eyes with the finger I had previously rubbed on an onion piece in my pocket. It stung so much that I didn't dare rub my other eye. One teary eye should have been enough. I stopped, started again, faltered, and hesitated. Oh, honey, I'm so ashamed that I didn't break up with him. He took me to a restaurant and bought a $1,300 bottle of Grange, even though he himself doesn't drink wine. Instead of wasting it, I drank almost all of it. I'm pretty sure that's what he wanted. I was too nervous to resist him. When we left the restaurant, he offered to take me home, and I foolishly agreed. Once in the driveway, he leaned over and kissed me, but I was too drunk to stop him. Or you know how I get after a couple of glasses of wine. Then he started touching my chest. At this point, my logic was completely broken, and I remember just thinking that I should move him out of the driveway so the neighbors wouldn't see us. For the same reason, I opened the garage door and forced him to park inside. I cheated a little by admitting that even in the car I thought Jason might be staying a while, and I certainly didn't want the neighbors to see a strange car in the driveway the next morning. But it was all a calculated risk on my part. I knew enough about men in general to understand that being betrayed was a major blow to a man's ego, and I wanted Dave to ensure that no one else ever found out about it. Well, except for 2 lawyers. Jason got out of the car as the garage door was closing and started kissing me again. As I said, I had already drunk most of the bottle of Grange and was ripe for plucking. He grabbed my key and led me inside. I took him to one of the spare bedrooms, and I will be ashamed of this until the day I die. I let him do whatever he wanted with me. I'm so sorry, Dave. My only saving grace was that I was composed enough with him to get him to put on a safe. After Jason came, I think we both fell asleep, I because I was drunk, and he because he must have been tired after a 4 or 5 month chase. I know for sure I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't drunk and depressed. When I woke up, and I definitely would have kicked him to the curb immediately, instead, you entered the room and turned on the light. I have never been so ashamed in my life. The look of pain on your face just killed me. I realized how much misuse I caused to you and us with one simple mistake. With tears still flowing from one eye, I turned my pleading gaze to my husband. Having spent a lifetime together, I knew that I could read his expression like an open book and be able to judge how my request was going. Not true. His expression remained neutral. In fact, he didn't even look at me. Strange, but he was fiddling with the laptop in front of him. I thought he was writing notes until he clicked the link on his screen. A voice came from the speakers, my voice. Gee, don't kiss me, Eureka Beer. What about you? Rotten grape breath? What? I had one lousy glass of white. The audio clip stopped, and the room fell into a thunderous silence. I think that's how it was. The roaring sound in my head drowned out everything else. Yes, I felt embarrassed and humiliated when Dave walked in on me that night with Jason before lifting Jason by his hair and beating the crap out of his body. But that was insignificant compared to the fact that I had just been caught in a huge lie. This completely threw me off track. I was so confident that my script would work. My eyes darted around the room. Dave's lawyer smiled slightly. Mine looked slightly embarrassed. Dave just looked at me expectantly with that damn blank expression. Later, I will never understand why I didn't immediately realize what it all meant. What the heck? Dave had an audio recording of my meeting with Jason that night. Being wound up, it never occurred to me to follow the logic of this. Why does he need a voice recorder there if he didn't know in advance that he could record something? What else did we say? The silence stretched, uncomfortably for a long time, and I looked at the cryptic shard of my notes and, looking back, stupidly plunged into the script I'd prepared. I clung to him like a drowning man clings to debris. It was only once. It won't happen again, nothing like that. Please believe me. I just wasn't strong enough to resist him. But I wasn't so out of control that I wouldn't force him to use protection or let him take me on our bed. Or he wanted it, but I would never do that, no matter how drunk I was. We were in Megan's old room, right? Dave just looked at me sadly, and I didn't know what was worse, his sad face or his impassive one. He shook his head and turned to the computer. I felt, rather than heard, him double-click the icon, and I cringed. I just like to watch how you lie in front of me, full of desire. It is very hot, Jason's voice said. Then, once it was finished, another double-click, and Jason's voice came again. When can we have time in bed again, in your clueless husband's bed? It was so cool. This time, Dave clicked and ended the clip, then just looked at me silently, accusatory. What could I even say? Everything I had claimed was debunked, not by Dave, but by my own words. Protection? A one-time drunken mistake? Not getting close with my husband in our own bed? The whole thing crumbled as a lie in just 30 words. I stood, speechless. Though it was awkward, I looked at Dave for any clue. His neutral gaze revealed nothing. I noticed my lawyer checking her watch, making me focus on the ticking timer and realizing the 60 minutes I had to salvage my marriage were slipping away, and I admit, going terribly. I forced myself to suppress panic. Apologies for the lie, Dave, about it being the first time. I just didn't want to hurt you more than I already had. I thought if I could convince you it was a one-time thing, and for the exact reason I stated, you wouldn't be so offended. I stumbled back into silence. Should I now admit I had dated Jason several times a week for over 6 months? The trouble was, I didn't know what Dave knew. He had recorded conversations revealing the night he found us wasn't the first or only night, but what else did he know? Hiding the recorder where I usually met Jason hinted at suspicion of at least one more time. I just didn't know. However, I knew that if I was caught telling one more lie, it would all be over. Well, Juliana, it's time to be vague. Avoid details and stick to the facts. The truth is, Jason did seduce me, and it took a while. He has a thing for older women. It's true that being pursued by a man almost my kid's age gave me an ego boost. I admit it, I was weak. I thought about saying I used the master bed only once, the first time. It would be a lie, but would put me in a better light. But not knowing how long Dave knew about my extramarital activities held me back. I decided to stay silent on this. However, I couldn't remain silent on everything. Realizing I had limited time to rectify the situation, unsure of the best course of action, I turned my attention to my notes. I discarded the initial points after being exposed and focused on words highlighted in capital letters. I conveyed that I never ceased to love and respect Dave, emphasizing that I gave him no less love than I always had. I explained that Jason was an additional dimension that didn't diminish anything from my love for Dave, but rather added an overflowing quality, if I could describe it that way. When I fell silent, Dave redirected his gaze to his laptop screen, furrowed his brow, and appeared momentarily confused. However, he eventually relaxed again, listening to the recording, a continuation of the earlier soundtrack. I understood that Dave's frown indicated he was searching for an icon on the screen before realizing it was one of the open files. It would be better if he didn't grasp it, and he evidently started over, going back to the beginning of the video. I revisited Jason's question about being close in our marital bed like the first time. I cringed, knowing my words once again condemned me. I already told you never again, not after the last time. That night, Dave stepped out of the shower and inadvertently stepped on a large drop of white, for which I was grateful. Dave accepted my explanation about sneezing, attributing the drop to snot. Sinking lower into my seat, I anticipated the predictable words that would follow. Although I initially felt smug when I uttered them, that feeling dissipated. Distracting Dave by offering to clean his leg and doing it nicely diverted his attention, commenting, "You have to admit, doll, that your husband sometimes acts like an ignorant idiot." I found myself discussing how Jason and I had successfully evaded detection, such as when he had to hide in the closet when Dave came home early. Insulting? Yes. Dave is clueless. Initially, I found it sweet that he trusted me so much. Now, he's just an ignorant fool. Sometimes I wonder if we could have time in bed right here while he's in the room. The mocking tone made me realize I was rehashing an actual point. With these words and such a tone, I couldn't even convince myself I loved and respected my husband, let alone him. Again, confusion set in. Before this meeting, I convinced myself I loved and respected Dave. But after what I did and said, how is that possible? Steeped in the ticking, tense silence after the final nail in my coffin, Dave turned to look at me. I couldn't look him in the face, so I turned to his lawyer. The contempt on her face made me shut down. Any doubts that Dave was just another client to her vanished. I looked away from her and now looked at my lawyer. She too wasn't quick enough to hide her disdain. Here I am, fighting for my future, surrounded by people who think I'm something they stepped into at the dog park, and one of them should be on my side. My confidence dissipated like dew in the midday sun, and my self-esteem quickly followed suit. Perhaps that's why I revisited my notes and chose to adopt an offensive stance. I conveyed to Dave that over the last 6 months he had been paying me decreasing attention, taking me for granted, traveling for business more frequently, and seemingly distancing himself from me. All of this occurred simultaneously with the children leaving home, leaving me feeling lost. I expressed how he was never there when I needed him, failing to reassure me about my age and attractiveness or provide comfort in times of need. Pausing, I noticed Dave's eyes returning to his screen, and I cringed as his fingers danced, opening the selected file. It became apparent that Jason's words were from just after our second encounter, that fateful night, shortly before Dave reached a breaking point. Jason spoke about our recent lack of a bed life, expressing his desire for more frequent encounters. He mentioned a canceled trip and how I had requested him to limit Dave's diet. Jason explained that he only had the opportunity that night due to an urgent meeting Dave had to attend. He also expressed a wish for Dave to leave town more often. "Well, I want more," retorted an irritated Jason, to which the clip was once again interrupted. Ashamed, I lowered my eyes to the table, avoiding 3 judgmental glances, and recalled my emotional state during the last conversation. The truth was that the novelty of having a lover, even one as young and energetic as Jason, was beginning to wear off. Jason and my actions in betraying my husband had caused me to lose respect for Dave, and it was at least beginning to prick my conscience. Loss of respect, more than anything else, I think, was the reason for my emotional distance from my husband. Even as I prepared for this meeting, fully intending to blame him for pulling away from me, I realized that it was a lie. To allow myself to continue to betray him, I emotionally divorced Dave. Cutting him off in bed was an easy decision, simply because Dave's lovemaking was so different from Jason's impatience that it was impossible to confuse the two. This reinforced to me that what I was doing was very, very wrong. So I began to reject my husband's advances. Well, he pressed for a while, then he stopped. I suddenly realized that it should have been screaming for my attention months ago. Dave suddenly gave up his bed life around the same time he began working longer hours and going away more often. At the time, I thought he was also emotionally distancing himself from me. I closed my eyes, now completely confused about who was distancing himself from who, and then something clicked. Dave must have known for a long time. That's why he knew he had to hide the recorder in Megan's room. Crap. My entire approach to this meeting was to minimize my crime, heal Dave's wounded pride, eat some humble pie, all to get my life back and the future I so desperately wanted. I thought I was calming a recently wounded bull, but if I was right about him knowing at least 2 weeks before he discovered, nay, confronted, me, then he was a lot more cunning than I thought. And I was wasting my time appealing to his emotions. In short, I had no idea what to do. I'm much better when I plan than when I'm spontaneous, hence 2 pages of notes. But I had to do something. Time was running out. The ticking of the clock confirmed this. In desperation, I took my notes and began to look for hope. The pounding in my head made absorbing the words a very slow process. Nothing jumped out. Then I realized that the recordings were a red herring because the game had changed so much. If Dave knew I was leaving for a while, what was his state of mind? He, of course, was offended by my betrayal, but most of all, he was worried about my motivation. Wasn't I satisfied with the quantity and quality of his lovemaking? Did I find him boring and want to explore my kinky side? Did I love Jason? Was I really going to run away with him? I could correct these fears and doubts. I risked looking into those expressionless eyes, wondering if I should risk lying again. If only I could remember what else Jason and I talked about that fateful night. If only I could be sure that this was the only night Dave had recorded. Of course, the sequence had to be suspect. Install recorders, resist. He could not have been sure of this for long, he just wasn't a good actor. I desperately wanted to convince him of the truth. I still loved and respected him. My desperate desire that he would not abandon me proved this. It was far beyond my fear of losing my very comfortable lifestyle. But how do I convince him that I respect him after we've all heard me call him a goofy in front of my lover? What's the point of trying to justify denigrating him to my lover as a sop to my conscience and creating a common bond between Jason and me? Nothing, that I could see. The same applied to love for him. If I had caught him deceiving me, wild horses would not have been able to draw the conclusion out of me that he still loved me. So, convincing him that I loved and respected him would take time. I had won time by convincing him not to insist that I immediately sign the divorce papers. But how long does that damn timer keep ticking to convince him of this? One thing was for sure, my next few sentences were going to score points. Lots of points. Summoning my courage, I directed my gaze across the table at Dave. I conveyed to him that I understood he perceived a loss of my love and respect, reassuring him that it was not the case. I affirmed my love for him and our life together, expressing a sincere desire to spend the remainder of my days solely with him. I acknowledged the gravity of my actions, admitting that Jason was a distraction and that I didn't love him. Furthermore, I assured Dave that running away with Jason was never my intention. I admitted the wrongdoing of my actions, particularly in response to Jason's proposal to limit our closeness. Reflecting on the situation, I confess that I didn't know why I went through with it, especially after convincing myself that I was merely providing Jason with an excess that Dave couldn't handle. I highlighted that Jason lacked the stamina and experience that Dave possessed, and my actions were driven solely by lust and selfishness. Although the physical aspect brought a temporary satisfaction, it was devoid of any genuine emotion. I clarified that I didn't engage in the same perversions with Jason that I had denied Dave throughout the years. Time seemed to slow down, mirroring the pace of those on the verge of passing away. The disintegration of my marriage unfolded in slow motion, with everyone around me moving at a normal speed. To my left, my lawyer expressed her disdain, tossing her pen on the table and turning to me. It was evident that, in this moment, I couldn't even pay someone to be on my side. Dave's lawyer leaned to the side to gain a better view of the laptop screen, revealing that Dave was not playing sound files as I had assumed, but rather video clips. This realization intensified the gravity of the situation. Dave's lawyer grabbed his hand in a show of support, and though he wasn't looking at me, his reaction conveyed a profound hurt, as if the man meant to support him had betrayed him. I witnessed a fleeting expression of devastation on his face, and a single tear rolled down from the eye closest to me. I questioned whether he was truly suffering, or if he had steeled himself by fixating on the screen. Amidst the chaos, a few irrelevant facts registered in my mind. The recording was made at least 3 weeks before the collision, meaning Dave had been witnessing my betrayal for some time, enough to discern a pattern. Silence enveloped us as the speakers played, the heat that had once suffused the room now transforming into a sense of dirtiness, sloppiness, and tastelessness. I focused on the table, and my lawyer laid out the divorce papers before me. Helpless, I couldn't counter the vile behavior that Dave had uncovered. With unparalleled ease, he dismantled all my rationalizations, minimizations, and feeble attempts at reconciliation. It was over. Dave, acting as an orchestra conductor, didn't utter a word today. Instead, he indicated the section of the orchestra he wanted to play next, using his skills and talents to execute a silent symphony of separation. No, it wasn't Dave. I ascended the scaffold myself, blindfolded, and with a noose in hand, kicking the lever. Dave simply erected the scaffold and departed as soon as he played the last clip. He knew precisely what I was going to say, leaving me with no chance at redemption. And when I came up with my arguments, based on my close knowledge of him after observing him for 3 decades, I had forgotten that he also looked at me for the same amount of time. Looking back at me with his smart, penetrating eyes, the shame and humiliation were unbearable and finally caused me to run away. Escape was what I needed. Running back. To the house that was still my home, at least until Dave got the eviction notice that was part of the agreement, and escaping to the children, who I hope will never know and will continue to love me unconditionally. The only way to salvation lay through a receipt. With the loss of most of my life, I took the pen, signed the 2 agreements, and threw it away in one fluid motion. I was surprised Dave's business wasn't worth more, but that's what my lawyer's assessment found. And of course, Dave had plenty of time to hide most of it. By that time, the last recording had thankfully ended, and the ticking silence returned. My lawyer took the signed papers, handing me a copy while placing the rest in her briefcase. She left the room, leaving me seated, frozen, torn between the desire to run and the wish to convey a positive message. I longed for an ember of hope, something to convince myself that there might be a chance to rekindle the flame someday, to let Dave know that I still cared about his well-being. The sharp sound of an alarm clock disrupted my thoughts, prompting me to stand up and deliver my positive phrase. The jackal, holding Dave's hand with both hands, urged him not to seek revenge on Jason, expressing her fear of never forgiving herself if he ended up in prison. Dave's response was another damning video, thankfully not featuring my voice but that of another woman, speaking in an almost shrill tone. She mentioned the consequences Jason would face if her brothers got to him first, identifying herself as Mrs. Jason. Initially, I had thought Jason's silence after the beating reflected fear on his part, but now I pondered that being divorced and penniless might be a fitting end for the scammer. The burden on my conscience grew heavier as I considered that he might die because he had been involved with me. As I prepared to leave, I couldn't bring myself to look Dave in the face. Whether he had his expressionless face, or whether he was laughing or crying, it all pained me. A constant reminder of the misuse I had caused this good man. He had lost everything except my house and money, and suffered a tremendous emotional blow, all at my hands. I deserved every bit of his anger. Through tears, I managed to squeeze out a feeble, "Goodbye, dear," as I shuffled toward the door. My pathetic attempt to salvage my old life was discarded, akin to a plague beetle. Perhaps my daughter Megan would visit me while I drowned myself in oblivion. Or, if she wasn't available, then my son Joel. Just as I began to push the door, voices behind me caught my attention. Another damn recording. An excited young male voice accused cheater. A very familiar female voice intervened, asking, "Are you sure, Dad?" "I think I'll drink alone today," was Dave's quiet reply.
This is going to be a bit different from the usual stuff you read around here. I know there's no shortage of stories about people getting cheated on, blindsided by someone they thought they could trust. But my story? It's not exactly that. See, I wasn't just the guy who got screwed over. In the end, I did some screwing over too. But let me tell you something, before you start thinking I'm just another asshole, I didn't get there on my own. I was pushed, pulled, and practically shoved into doing what I did. It wasn't entirely my fault. But hey, let's back up a bit. We gotta start somewhere, right? I figure a little context won't hurt before I dive into the madness. First off, I'm just an average guy. I'm not some genius, not some hero in a movie. I'm just a dude working a regular job, trying to make ends meet and keep some kind of balance in life. I've never been the type to seek out drama. I'm steady, predictable even. That's just who I am. Always have been. My name's not important, but my wife's? Lisa? Now, she's a different story. Lisa was the type of woman people noticed. She had this presence, you know? Like she could walk into a room, and instantly, everyone was drawn to her. It wasn't that she was drop-dead gorgeous, though she was beautiful. It was more about how she carried herself. Confident, quick-witted, sharp as a knife when it came to conversation. She had this energy that made people gravitate toward her. Hell, even when we first met, I was in awe of how easy things seemed for her. People just liked being around her. And why wouldn't they? She was funny, charming, and had this infectious laugh that could make you smile even if you were having the worst day. And her sense of humor? That was something else. She could roast you, tear you down with a single line, and somehow, you'd still end up laughing. It was like magic. Everyone loved her for it, her friends, our family, even my buddies. And I'll admit, in the beginning, I did too. But over time, that same humor? It started to wear thin on me. It's hard to laugh along when the joke's always at your expense, you know? She was the funny one in our relationship. Me? Not so much. I was the serious one, the guy who kept everything running smoothly, who made sure we stayed grounded. And for a while, that dynamic worked. She brought the spark, and I kept the fire from burning down the house. But her humor? Well, that humor came back to bite me in the ass. It played one hell of a cruel joke on me. So evil, so twisted, that I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't lived it. You won't either. Not until you hear what went down. It was just a regular evening. Nothing special. I came home from work, exhausted like usual. The grind was starting to get to me, but that's life, right? You work, you come home, you eat, you sleep, repeat. But that night, when I walked through the door, the house smelled warm, inviting. Dinner was already on the table. Something Italian, I think. She knew I liked pasta, so she'd always whip it up on nights like this when she felt in a good mood. The candles were lit, Lisa had a thing for atmosphere, and there she was, smiling like nothing was wrong, like everything was just peachy. We sat down to eat. We talked, like we always did. Just regular stuff. I asked her how her day was, she asked me about mine. She laughed at something stupid I said, her laugh, that damn laugh. I remember thinking everything was fine. I wasn't really paying attention to her mood, I was too busy stuffing my face, trying to shake off the stress of the day. But as the conversation went on, something in the air changed. It was subtle at first, just a shift in the way she was sitting, how her voice dipped a little. I noticed her leaning back in her chair, her eyes kind of narrowing. And then she hit me with it, out of nowhere. You know, she started, her voice casual, like she was talking about the weather. I've been feeling a little tired of us lately. I looked up from my plate, confused, like maybe I hadn't heard her right. Tired? I repeated, my fork hovering midair. What do you mean, tired? She sighed, like this was the most normal conversation in the world. I don't know, it's just, things have been feeling a bit stale. Like we're stuck, you know? I didn't know. I was completely blindsided. We weren't fighting, we weren't in some kind of deep rut, at least, not that I could see. We had our routines, sure, but I thought we were solid. Married for 7 years, you'd think we'd have this figured out by now. But apparently, I was wrong. So wrong. And then she dropped the real bomb on me. So, I slept with someone, she said, deadpan. Like it was no big deal. Like she was telling me she bought a new pair of shoes or changed her hair color. It made me feel better. But don't worry, I'm not gonna do it again. I couldn't process it. My brain just stopped. Everything went quiet inside my head. The words hung in the air like some sort of sick joke that hadn't landed yet. Did she just say that? Did she just tell me she cheated on me over dinner? Casually, like it was nothing. My mouth went dry. My hands tightened around the fork, and I could feel the metal bending under the pressure of my grip, but I didn't care. I stared at her, searching for any sign that she was joking, that this was another one of her stupid pranks. But there was nothing in her eyes, just cold indifference. And then, like she hadn't just ripped my world apart, she stood up, walked over to me, and kissed me on the lips. A quick, meaningless kiss. "Good night," she said softly, and without another word, she turned and walked to the bedroom, leaving me sitting there, completely paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't even think straight. I stared down at my hands, realizing I had bent the damn fork in half. My chest was tight, and all I could feel was rage building up, filling every part of me. But instead of going after her, instead of demanding answers, I stayed rooted to my seat, fists clenched, my mind spinning with one thought: revenge. She thought she could just drop that bomb, kiss me, and go to bed like nothing happened? Like I wasn't supposed to react? Oh, I was going to react, all right. I was going to make her regret ever opening her mouth. But how the hell was I supposed to know it was all a joke? How was I supposed to know that her sick sense of humor would take things this far? As soon as she kissed me on the lips and walked off to the bedroom like nothing happened, I felt this surge of rage just burn through me. I couldn't sit there and stew in it, not with the way my mind was spiraling. So, without a second thought, I grabbed my jacket, threw it on, and walked straight out of the house. I needed to get out of there. I needed air, space, something to clear my head, but more than that, I needed someone to talk to. My first instinct was to call my best friend, the guy I'd usually turn to when shit hit the fan. But as I was scrolling through my contacts, my thumb paused on someone else's name, my wife's friend. Let's call her Megan. Now, Megan wasn't just some random friend of Lisa's. I'd known her longer than I'd known my wife. We used to run in the same circles before Lisa and I ever became a thing. And if I'm being completely honest, there had always been something between Megan and me. Nothing serious, but I knew she liked me back then, before I got with Lisa. It was one of those things where the timing was never right. But I had a gut feeling, her feelings hadn't gone anywhere, not entirely. So, without really thinking it through, I called her. She picked up after a couple of rings, sounding surprised but not in a bad way. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, her voice casual, like we hadn't spoken in months. "Can you meet me?" I blurted out. "At the bar near your place?" I need to talk." There was a pause, a brief one, but she didn't ask any questions. "Sure. I'll be there in 10. That was it. No grilling me about why I needed to talk or what was going on. She just agreed, like she knew something was up. I jumped in my car and headed to the bar, my mind still racing with what had just gone down at home. When I pulled up to the place, I saw her immediately. She was already sitting at a booth, nursing a drink. Megan looked up as I walked in, her eyebrows raised slightly in surprise. "Where's Lisa?" I sat down, avoiding her question at first. "She's not coming," I said flatly. That got her attention. She leaned in a little, her expression shifting from casual to concerned. "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." We ordered a couple of drinks, and once the alcohol hit my system, the words just poured out. I told her everything, what Lisa had said, how she casually dropped that she cheated, and how she acted like it was no big deal. At first, Megan didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, the shock, the disbelief. But the more she looked at me, the more she realized I wasn't lying. I could see it all clicking in her head. We kept drinking, the conversation getting heavier with every round. I could feel the alcohol dulling the edge of my anger, but it was still there, simmering under the surface. By the time the bartender gave us the last call, we were both pretty drunk. Megan, out of nowhere, leaned closer and said, I have another bottle of wine back at my place, if you want to keep this going. I didn't even have to think about it. I nodded, and we left the bar together. Her apartment was only a short walk from the bar. We stumbled in, laughing about something I can't even remember now. The moment we opened that bottle of wine, though, I knew exactly where the night was heading. There was this look in her eyes, a kind of intensity, and I wasn't going to stop it. I didn't want to. It didn't take long. After a few glasses, things escalated. 1 minute we were talking, and the next, we were on her couch, hands everywhere, lips locked. And in that moment, I decided to do something I hadn't planned on at all. I pulled out my phone and started filming. Not the whole thing, just clips here and there. Megan noticed, of course, and at first, she wasn't having it. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice a little slurred but still sharp. She pushed my hand away. "It's just for me," I said quickly, trying to reassure her. "No one else will ever see it, I promise. It'll be fine." She hesitated but eventually caved. Alcohol, desire, and years of unresolved tension will do that, I guess. So, I kept the camera rolling for a bit, capturing just enough to satisfy whatever twisted part of me thought this was a good idea. Afterward, when it was all over, I sat up and told her I had to go. She looked at me, disappointed. "You're leaving?" she asked, a little hurt creeping into her voice. "Yeah, I should," I said, already feeling the weight of what I had just done. "It's late." She wanted me to stay. I could tell. But I wasn't about to spend the night in her bed. This wasn't going to be a regular thing, and I sure as hell wasn't about to complicate my life even more by sticking around. So I left. I called a taxi, and as I sat in the back seat, my head spinning from the booze and the sex, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of satisfaction and guilt. I'd done it. I'd taken revenge. But had it made me feel better? No. Not really. If anything, I just felt hollow. Like the night had filled a temporary void, but it wasn't going to fix anything. When I got home, it was late. The house was dark, and Lisa was probably asleep in the bedroom, completely unaware of what had just happened. I stood in the hallway for a minute, my mind racing, trying to process everything. And then, without a word, I headed to the couch and crashed there for the night. The next morning, I could already feel the tension in the air. You know that heavy, suffocating kind of silence that just tells you something's off? Yeah, that was it. I tried to shake it off as I dragged myself into the kitchen, half expecting Lisa to be all sunshine and rainbows, acting like last night never happened. But nope. She was sitting there at the table, her eyes narrowed and lips pressed together in a thin line as she scrolled through her phone. She didn't even look up when I walked in, just sipped her coffee, but I could tell she was pissed. Not raging pissed, more like that low-burn simmering kind of anger where you know she's just waiting to explode. I sat down across from her, pretending not to notice, but I could feel the weight of her eyes on me, practically drilling into the back of my head. We ate in silence for a few minutes before she finally spoke, her voice dripping with irritation. "So," she said, dragging the word out, "where the hell were you last night? You came home so damn late, and you didn't even come to bed." I could feel her eyes on me, waiting for an explanation, but I wasn't in the mood for her interrogation. Still, I knew I had to answer, but this time, I wasn't going to lie. She had started this mess, after all. I took a deep breath, trying to sound as calm as possible. "I was out," I said flatly, not giving her anything more to work with just yet. Needed some space to think. Her eyes narrowed, and she set her phone down, giving me her full attention. "Think about what?" "Because, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were up to something." I glanced at her, a slight smirk tugging at the corner of my mouth. "Yeah, I was thinking. About us. About how I'm a little tired of our relationship too." That caught her off guard. She blinked a few times, her brows furrowing in confusion. Wait, what? You're tired? Since when? I shrugged, keeping my tone casual, like it wasn't a big deal, even though we both knew it was. For a while, I guess. And last night, I paused, letting the tension build in the room. I did something about it. Her expression didn't change at first. She looked confused, almost like she thought I was screwing with her. Then she leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms, and smirked like she had caught me in a lie. Oh, really? You did something about it? What did you do, huh? Cheat on me? I stared right at her and nodded. Yeah. I did. The smirk stayed on her face, but her eyes were searching mine, trying to figure out if I was serious or not. Oh, come on, she said, letting out a short laugh. You're joking. What is this, your way of getting back at me for what I said last night? I didn't break eye contact. I'm not joking, Lisa. I cheated on you, her smile faltered, but only for a second. Sure, you did. With who? The waitress at the bar? Some random girl from work? Who? I took another breath, knowing exactly what this was about to do to her. No. Not some random girl. It was with Megan that did it. Her smile disappeared entirely, replaced by a look of disbelief. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open as if she couldn't quite process what I had just said. Wait. What? Megan? My Megan? Are you serious right now? I didn't flinch. Yeah. I slept with her last night. She blinked again, then burst out laughing, though this time it was more out of nerves than humor. Oh my God, you're kidding. You have to be. Megan? That's your big lie. What kind of joke is this? I didn't say anything, just calmly reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened the video. I pressed play and held it up for her to see. She looked at the screen, still smiling, still thinking this was some elaborate prank. But as the video started, and Megan's face appeared, her smile began to waver. Then the sound kicked in, our voices, the unmistakable noise of what we had done, and her expression changed completely. Her face went pale, her eyes widening in shock. Her hand flew up to her mouth, and before I could react, she smacked the phone out of my hand with enough force to send it clattering across the table. You bastard, she screamed, her voice cracking as she stood up so fast her chair almost toppled over. You fucking idiot. You slept with Megan. You're out of your goddamn mind. I stood up, my own anger rising to match hers. Oh, so now I'm the asshole? What about you, huh? You cheated on me first. You don't get to play the victim here, she glared at me, her eyes wild, her breathing heavy. I didn't cheat on you, you moron. It was a fucking joke, I froze. Her words echoed in my head, but I couldn't process them at first. A joke? What are you talking about? She threw her hands up in frustration, pacing around the kitchen like she was about to explode. I said it to mess with you. I was kidding, you idiot. I didn't sleep with anyone. I was going to tell you after you cooled down, but you stormed out of the house like a maniac before I could explain. The room started spinning. My brain struggled to catch up with what she was saying. A joke? You were joking? Yes, she screamed, tears welling up in her eyes. I was fucking joking. I never cheated on you. But you? You just went and slept with Megan and filmed it? How the hell do you expect me to react to that? I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. All the anger, all the justification I had built up inside myself crumbled in an instant. I stood there, my mouth dry, my heart pounding, realizing just how badly I had screwed up. Lisa, I said softly, trying to reach for her. I didn't know. She cut me off, her voice cracking. I don't want to hear it. You've done enough. Tears streamed down her face now, and she looked more broken than I had ever seen her. You ruined everything, you asshole. You slept with my best friend. How am I supposed to forgive that? I had no words. There was nothing I could say to fix it. I didn't know, I repeated weakly, but the words felt hollow, useless. She shook her head, backing away from me. Just go. I don't want to see you right now. With that, she turned and stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her so hard the walls shook. I heard the lock click, followed by the sound of her sobbing. I stood there in the middle of the kitchen, feeling like my world had just imploded. I wanted to fix it, to apologize, but what could I do? I had fucked up. Badly. And now, there was no turning back. After Lisa locked herself in the bedroom, I knew I couldn't just sit around and wait for things to fix themselves. The guilt was eating me alive. I couldn't get the look on her face out of my head, the shock, the hurt. But at the same time, I was still angry. Angry that she had even made that stupid joke in the first place, that she pushed me to this. So, I grabbed my jacket again and went straight to Megan's place. I had to tell her everything. When I got there, Megan opened the door, her face lighting up when she saw me, at least for a second. I didn't waste time with small talk. I told her everything, from the moment Lisa confessed her joke to the second I showed Lisa the video. And as I spoke, I could see Megan's face shift from confused to furious. "You're an asshole," she spat, crossing her arms, her expression hardening. "You set me up. You didn't tell me this was all because of some sick revenge scheme. What the hell are you talking about?" I shot back, my own frustration bubbling to the surface. "You agreed to it, remember? You knew what we were doing." "Yeah, I agreed because I thought it was just between us," she yelled, pacing around her living room, hands flying up in the air. "I didn't know you were using me to get back at Lisa. Do you realize what you've done? I've lost my best friend because of you." I clenched my fists, trying to keep calm. "It's not just my fault, Megan. You were there. You knew what you were doing. You're just as guilty." She stopped in her tracks and glared at me. "You really are a piece of work, you know that? I've loved you since university, and this is how you repay me? By screwing up my life?" The words hit me like a punch in the gut. I had no idea she still had feelings for me, not like that. For a moment, the anger between us fizzled out, replaced by this heavy silence. We both just sat down on her couch, staring at the floor, trying to make sense of everything. After a few minutes, Megan sighed and pulled out her phone. "I'm gonna try calling Lisa. Maybe I can explain, make her understand. I don't know, something." She dialed, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried again, and again, but no luck. Lisa wasn't picking up, and at this point, I didn't know if she ever would. Desperation was starting to creep in. I felt like I was sinking, and no matter what I did, I couldn't pull myself out. I left Megan's place after a while and went back home, hoping to try again with Lisa, to apologize, to fix this mess somehow. But when I walked through the door, the first thing she said to me was, "I already called a lawyer." She didn't even look at me, her voice cold and detached. "I'm filing for divorce." I felt my stomach drop. It was like the ground beneath me had crumbled, and I was free-falling with no end in sight. "Lisa, please," I started, but she didn't want to hear it. "There's nothing more to say," she cut me off, her back turned as she folded laundry like it was just another day. "You made your choice. I'm making mine." I stood there for a moment, trying to think of what to say, but there was nothing. I felt like complete shit. I had lost her. There was no going back from this. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I went back to Megan's place. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, I asked if I could stay with her for a while. She hesitated, her eyes scanning my face, full of frustration and doubt. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said at first, crossing her arms again. I couldn't blame her. I had dragged her into this mess, too. She had her own shit to deal with now. But as I turned to leave, defeated, she called me back. "Wait," she said, softer this time. "All right, fine. You can stay. But just for a bit. This whole thing, it's a lot." And so, I stayed with Megan. The divorce process dragged on for about a month, and during that time, our entire social circle knew about what happened. Lisa made sure of it. She told everyone, every little detail, and our friends all picked sides. Some stayed neutral, but most of them sided with her. I couldn't blame them. During that time, Megan and I started spending more time together. What had started as a mistake, something fueled by anger and bad decisions, slowly turned into something else. We tried to date, to make sense of this new situation, but the more we tried, the more we realized that something wasn't right. There was this huge gap between us, like we were both too broken, too out of place to make anything work. She still had feelings for me, sure, but now they were tainted by everything that had happened. I felt it too. We tried to act like things were normal, but nothing was. Every time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the guilt of what we'd done. Every time she smiled, it was forced, like she was trying to convince herself this was okay. But deep down, we both knew it wasn't. I was stuck in this limbo, trapped between the wreckage of my marriage and this new, fragile thing with Megan that didn't feel real. And as the days passed, it became clearer that no matter how hard we tried to move on, neither of us could escape the mess we had created. We were out of place, both of us, and I had no idea where to go from there. Update: it's been a while since everything went down, and I figured I owe you all an update. After all the chaos with Lisa, the divorce, and that whole mess with Megan, I've had some time to reflect. I've grown up a lot, more than I ever thought I would, honestly. Megan and I, well, we tried to make it work for a while. We had a history, sure, and for a moment, it felt like maybe we could turn something messy into something meaningful. But the reality of it was, it just wasn't right. We grew up together in more ways than one, and for a while, we were each other's crutch during a time when everything was falling apart. But you know what really killed it? Our so-called friends. The judgment from everyone around us was relentless. People love to talk, to point fingers, like they're somehow better or above it all. They whispered behind our backs, made snide comments, and acted like we were some scandal they could gossip about at every chance they got. It was exhausting, and eventually, it just became too much. Megan and I sat down one night, after yet another awkward encounter with one of her friends, and we both knew. We knew this wasn't going to work, not with all the baggage, not with everyone's opinions hanging over us like a storm cloud. So, we made the call to end it. It wasn't some big fight or dramatic breakup. We just let it go. For both our sakes. Now, I'm in a different place, literally and figuratively. I've made the decision to move to another city. I'm packing up my stuff, getting ready to leave this town and all the memories behind. It's strange, but it feels like the right move. Like I need to get away from the mess, from the people who won't let me forget what happened, and just start over. I want to start my life from scratch. No more judgmental eyes, no more baggage from the past weighing me down. It's scary as hell, I won't lie. But there's something about a fresh start that gives me hope. Maybe this time, I can figure out who I really am, without all the mistakes and bad decisions hanging over my head. I'm not saying it'll be easy. Nothing ever is. But it's a step forward, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm ready for it. Here's to new beginnings. Update: well, here I am, already settled into a new city. It's strange how quickly things can change when you really decide to leave the past behind. I found a job pretty quickly, too. I'm working in an office now, doing something totally different from what I used to. It's nothing fancy, just basic admin work with a little bit of project management on the side. It's a steady gig, and honestly, after everything I've been through, the normalcy is kind of a relief. I clock in, do my job, and clock out. No drama, no stress. Just the daily grind, and for now, that's enough. But, of course, life always has a way of throwing something unexpected at you. There's this girl at work, let's call her Anna. She's the kind of woman who lights up the room when she walks in, but not in an over-the-top way. There's just something about her. She's got this quiet confidence, you know? Not to mention, she's smart as hell and doesn't take crap from anyone. I catch myself looking her way more than I should, and I think she's noticed, but I haven't been able to say anything. I mean, how could I? I'm still carrying all this baggage from my past. The divorce, the fallout with Megan, it's all still there, lingering in the back of my mind. I can't help but feel guilty, like I don't deserve to try again. Part of me feels like I need to make peace with everything that happened before I can even think about moving forward with someone else. So here I am, stuck in this weird limbo. I really like Anna, but I don't know how to tell her. I keep thinking, what if I mess it up again? What if I'm still too broken to make this work? I guess that's why I'm asking you all, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you take the risk, or wait it out until you're sure the past won't screw things up? Anyway, I just wanted to check in and thank you for sticking with me through all of this. Your support has meant a lot, more than I can say. I'm still figuring things out, but it feels good to know there are people out there who've got my back. Here's hoping I can make something good out of all this. Update. I figured it was time for another update, and this one's a bit different from the last. I'm in a relationship with that girl from work, Anna. It's been going well, better than I expected, honestly. I took my time, though. I didn't rush into anything because I wanted to make sure I was ready. I've been working with a psychologist for a while now, really putting in the effort to work through the mess of emotions and heartache after everything that went down with Lisa and Megan. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. The thing is, I realized I can't keep punishing myself for the past. Yeah, I made some serious mistakes, and yeah, it's taken a lot to come to terms with them. But I'm starting to feel like I'm finally moving forward, like I deserve to try again. And Anna? She's been patient, understanding, and just good. She knows about my past, and while I was nervous to tell her at first, she didn't judge me for it. That's rare. One thing that hasn't changed, though, I never did develop a sense of humor. Maybe that's just not in the cards for me, but I've learned to live with it. We laugh about it sometimes, especially since Anna's got that lightness to her that I admire. Maybe that's enough for both of us. Anyway, I just wanted to let you all know how things are going. I'm in a better place now, and it feels good to finally say that. Thanks for sticking with me through everything. Wishing you all the best, and good luck wherever life takes you.